Not too long ago, I had a serious knee surgery that pretty much kept me stuck at home. I live alone in a quiet neighborhood. You know, the kind where houses aren't all squished together and there are lots of big trees everywhere. Since I couldn't do much else and had loads of time to kill, I started a new hobby, watching my neighbors through my binoculars from my living room window. It might sound a bit creepy, but it was just a way to pass the time and keep an eye on the neighborhood. Little did I know, this simple pastime would soon turn my world upside down. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself drawn more and more to one house in particular. Joe Jenkins lived across the street, and something about his place just didn't sit right with me. It was odd, really odd, because I never saw him leave his house, not even once. Whether it was morning, noon, or night, Joe was always there, always inside. I got really curious. One chilly evening as I was scanning the neighborhood with my binoculars, something caught my eye at Joe's house. There was a sudden flurry of movement inside. I zoomed in and saw Joe in a heated argument with someone, a shadowy figure I couldn't quite make out. Their silhouettes were pushing and shoving against the dim light of the living room. Just as quickly as it started, everything went silent. The figure disappeared as if it had never been there. It was so abrupt, it sent a chill down my spine. In the days that followed, Joe's house became a hive of mysterious activities. Late at night, I noticed different cars parked outside his house, ones I had never seen before. People I couldn't recognize would arrive and leave at odd hours, carrying things inside, bags, boxes, sometimes even larger stranger items that were hard to make out in the darkness. These weren't your regular delivery guys. They moved swiftly, almost as if they didn't want to be seen. Each unusual event made me more uneasy. Something strange was going on in Joe's house, and I couldn't help feeling it was something bad. I knew I should probably stop watching, but my curiosity was too strong. I had to know what was happening in that house across the street. Little did I know, my curiosity would soon plunge me into a nightmare I wasn't prepared for. One night just past midnight, I was back at my window with the binoculars. That's when I saw it. Another violent fight at Joe's house. This time, it looked serious. Joe seemed to be really hurting someone. I couldn't just sit back and watch, so I dialed the police right away. When the officers arrived, I explained everything I saw, but after checking Joe's house, they said they didn't find anything suspicious. No sign of a struggle, no sign of the other person I was sure I'd seen. They left with skeptical looks on their faces, probably thinking I was just some nosy neighbor making up stories. But the scariest part came just after the police left. I looked out my window again, and there was Joe, staring right back at me from his window. His face was cold, his eyes fixed on me in a way that sent shivers down my spine. He knew I was watching. The next night was even worse. I was trying to stay calm, telling myself it was over, when I heard noises outside. Peeking out, I saw a figure tampering with my car in the driveway. Panic shot through me. I quickly locked all my doors and grabbed my phone to call for help, but my hands were shaking so badly. I didn't want to call the police again as I was not sure they would take me seriously, so I just switched off all the lights and ended up sleeping on my living room couch with a golf club next to me. The following evening, as darkness fell, my entire house suddenly went pitch black. The power was cut. Then, the sound of someone trying to break in echoed through the silent house. I grabbed my flashlight and my golf club and moved quietly towards the sound. Each creak of my floorboards felt like it echoed through the house, and every shadow seemed like it could be the intruder. As I approached the back door, the handle started turning slowly. My heart was pounding in my chest as I braced myself, ready to defend my home. In the pitch black of my house, with my heart racing like never before, I knew I had to make a move. Holding my breath, I crept towards the back door, but at the last second, I made a dash for the back door and slipped out into the chilly night air. My backyard was dark and quiet, except for the rustling of leaves underfoot as I hurried to my tool shed. I shut the door behind me with a soft click and quickly found my old cell phone in a drawer. My hands were trembling as I dialed the police, whispering urgently into the phone about what was happening. I crouched down, trying to make myself as small as possible, listening to the sounds of someone searching my house. This time, the police came quickly. I heard sirens in the distance, growing louder until they filled the street outside. I peeked out the shed window and saw flashing lights through the gaps in the wooden slats. The police officers moved swiftly towards my house, and I finally let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Moments later, I heard shouting and a commotion at the back door of my house. I crept out of the shed to see the police handcuffing Joe. He was caught red-handed trying to break through my back door with a crowbar. The officers later told me that Joe had been involved in illegal activities, and he thought I had collected evidence against him with my binoculars. He wanted to scare me into staying quiet or find whatever he thought I had on him. As the police led Joe away, I felt a huge sense of relief. The threat was gone, and I was safe, all thanks to the swift actions of the police and a bit of quick thinking on my part. After all that chaos, things slowly started to calm down in our neighborhood. Joe was arrested, and peace returned to our quiet little street. Sitting back in my living room, now without my binoculars, I had a lot of time to think about everything that had happened. I realized just how quickly curiosity could turn into something really dangerous. It started as just a way to pass the time, but it nearly got me into a whole lot of trouble. From now on, I decided to focus more on getting better, on my recovery, and less on the mysteries that might be going on outside my windows. My husband John and I recently moved into an old house that's full of charm and sits in a peaceful neighborhood. It's a big house with lots of character, like something out of a storybook. John travels a lot for work, so I often find myself alone here. I'm a freelance graphic designer, and I usually work from home. The quietness of this place is perfect for my creativity and helps me focus on my designs. But the house had secrets that would soon turn my peaceful solitude into a chilling ordeal. One quiet evening, as I was cleaning the kitchen, my mop caught on something. Curious, I bent down and noticed a loose floorboard. With a bit of effort, I pried it open and couldn't believe my eyes. A hidden staircase spiraling down into darkness. I felt excited and afraid at the same time as I grabbed a flashlight and decided to see where it led. The air grew cooler as I descended into a dusty, forgotten basement. It was like stepping back in time. The room was scattered with old, eerie belongings. There were faded photographs of people I didn't recognize, their eyes hauntingly staring back at me. There were old toys, the kind you'd see in a century-old photograph, and a diary, its pages yellowed and filled with desperate, scribbled entries. It was clear someone had spent a great deal of time here, and the somber tone of the diary suggested they hadn't been here by choice. As I ventured deeper, my flashlight beam landed on a large section of the basement wall. It was covered in scratch marks, each tallying a day. I counted quickly, realizing these tallies stretched across the wall, marking years, not just days or months. My heart raced as I stood there, the gravity of what these marks represented washing over me. Someone had been trapped here, counting each day as it passed. This chilling discovery made me shudder and question the true history of this old house and who might have been its previous, unwilling occupant. One night, while John was away and the house was silent except for the wind outside, I heard it, a strange, unsettling noise coming from the basement. My first thought was to ignore it, but curiosity pushed me to investigate. With my flashlight in hand, I cautiously made my way down the hidden staircase for a second time. As I reached the basement, the air felt unnervingly cold. My flashlight flickered across the room, revealing fresh food remains scattered on a small table. Someone had been here recently, eating, living, right beneath my feet. Panic gripped me, but before I could turn to leave, I heard a noise behind me. Turning around, I came face to face with a man, haggard, with wild eyes. He was the previous occupant, the one who'd been hiding in this basement all these years. His expression changed from surprise to a twisted joy as he approached me, calling me by another woman's name, convinced I was his long-lost wife. I tried to tell him he was mistaken, but my words only made him angry. Before I could react, he grabbed my arm and dragged me deeper into the basement, locking the heavy door behind us. My heart pounded as I realized he planned to keep me here, just like he had been kept. Trapped, I scanned the room for anything I could use to escape. I remembered the diary and the old toys, clues of the life he had lived down here, and possibly my tools for survival. I whispered apologies and promises, trying to calm him while I edged toward a rusty screwdriver lying near the old photographs. Just as I grabbed it, my movements knocked over a stack of cans, triggering a silent alarm he had rigged. The sound was like a signal, and he lunged towards me in the darkness. The chase was a terrifying game of hide-and-seek in the cramped, shadowy basement. I ducked behind old furniture and crept through narrow passages formed by stacked boxes, my heart racing as I could hear his erratic breaths close behind me. Each corner I turned, I expected him to be there, but I kept moving, driven by sheer survival instinct. After what felt like an hour of dodging and weaving through the dark, cluttered basement, I spotted a small, dimly lit outline of a window high up on the wall. It was slightly ajar. It was my only chance. I stacked up some old boxes, creating a makeshift ladder, and climbed with all the strength I had left. Just as I reached the window, I heard his footsteps thundering closer. With a desperate push, I managed to slide through the narrow opening, tumbling out into the cold night air. Once outside, I didn't stop to catch my breath. I ran across the yard, my heart pounding in my ears, and didn't stop until I reached the safety of the street. Shaking and breathless, I pulled out my cell phone and dialed the police. The night was eerily quiet as I waited, hiding in the shadows, fearing he might come after me. The police arrived quickly. Lights flashed and officers swarmed the house. I watched from a distance, wrapped in a blanket one of the neighbors had given me. They found him in the basement, confused and distressed, holding on to a faded photograph of a woman he believed was his wife. The officers led him away, and as the car drove off, the weight of what had happened began to lift off my shoulders. I was safe now, but the night's terror still echoed in my mind. I knew that finally, both he and I were free from the dark echoes of the past that had haunted that basement. After that night, John and I couldn't bring ourselves to stay in the house any longer. The memories of what had happened in the basement, the fear and the darkness, lingered in every corner. We decided it was best to move out and find a new place to live, somewhere bright and open, where the shadows of the past couldn't reach us. As we packed our things, I found myself thinking a lot about how dangerous curiosity can be. It's like opening a door without knowing what's on the other side. Sometimes the past should just stay buried, because once it's out, it can change everything. I learned that the hard way. From now on, I promised myself to be more careful about the places we call home, to really understand their history before we get too comfortable. A couple of months ago, I had an experience that still sends chills down my spine whenever I think about it. I was babysitting for a young couple in their large, lovely home tucked away in a well-kept suburban neighborhood. It's usually a quiet place, the kind of area where nothing much ever happens. That night, the couple had plans to go out, leaving me in charge of their toddler, Max, who I had just tucked into bed. The house, with its multiple bedrooms and spacious living room, felt cozy yet somehow imposing with its silence. Once Max was asleep, I settled down in the living room to study, the soft hum of the house around me. Everything was peaceful, almost perfect, but that tranquility didn't last. Little did I know, the quiet of that evening was about to be shattered in a way that would turn what should have been a simple babysitting job into a night of sheer terror. I was deep into my textbooks when a flicker of movement caught my eye through the living room window. At first, I brushed it off as nothing, probably just a neighbor's cat prowling around. But then, I saw it wasn't a cat at all. It was a man, a strange man I'd never seen before, lingering in the yard, looking around as if searching for something. My heart skipped a beat when he started walking straight toward the front door. As soon as the doorbell rang, a chill ran down my spine. This was odd. Who could it be at this late hour? I hesitated but gathered my courage to answer the door, keeping the chain latch fastened for safety. Through the narrow opening, the man introduced himself as someone from the municipality. He explained, hurriedly, about a supposed gas leak in the area. His claim could have been believable, except it was so late in the evening, much later than you'd expect any municipal worker to be making house calls. His next question made my stomach drop. "Can I speak to the owner of the house?" he asked, peering over my shoulder as if trying to see past me into the house. Alarm bells rang in my head. I couldn't let him know I was here alone. Thinking quickly, I blurted out that my parents owned the house, but that my dad was in the shower and couldn't come to the door right now. I hoped this would make him leave, or at least wait outside. Each second felt like an eternity as I stood there, holding the door, telling this half-truth to protect myself. I didn't know if he bought my story, but I knew I had to keep my wits about me. The night had taken a sinister turn, and I was right in the middle of it, with little Max asleep upstairs, unaware of the danger that might be lurking just outside his front door. The air felt heavy with tension as the man, under the pretense of being concerned about the gas leak, suggested he should wait inside until my father was available. Just as I hesitated, a sudden cry from upstairs broke the silence. Little Max was awake and crying. The sound seemed to shift the man's attention, his eyes narrowing slightly as if putting the pieces together, questioning my earlier story about my parents. Reluctantly, and against every instinct screaming inside me, I let him step into the foyer. I tried to appear calm, but my hands were shaking and my voice faltered as I spoke. He noticed my nervousness, his eyes tracking my every move, making me feel even more on edge. As I excused myself to check on Max, I rushed upstairs, my heart pounding in my chest. In Max's room, while I soothed him back to sleep, I quickly grabbed my phone and texted the parents, whispering into the phone about the strange man in their house. But as I spoke, the floorboards outside the room creaked ominously. Had he heard me? With Max settled, I told the man I needed to use the bathroom quickly. Inside, I locked the door and dialed 911, my voice a whisper as I urgently explained the situation. Just as I finished giving my location, a chilling sound made me freeze. The unmistakable sound of footsteps climbing the stairs. They were heavy, deliberate, filled with a menacing intent. My breath caught in my throat as I realized he was coming for me. The seconds stretched into what felt like hours as I heard his approach, each step echoing louder and more threatening. I pressed my back against the door, phone still in hand, praying that help would arrive before it was too late. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything over its thumping as the man's footsteps grew louder and closer. I pressed my ear against the bathroom door, straining to hear any change in the sound that would tell me he was just outside. Then, suddenly, the footsteps stopped. The house fell silent except for my heavy breathing. Just when I thought he might be about to break down the door, I heard the distant sound of sirens. The police were on their way, but would they make it in time? I gripped my phone tighter, ready to scream for help if he tried to get in. Then, another sound broke the silence, car tires screeching to a halt outside. It was followed by the familiar voices of Max's parents, shouting my name and the man's. Relief flooded through me, but it was short-lived. The footsteps started again, this time rushing back down the stairs. I heard shouting downstairs, the urgent tones of Max's dad, and the sharp, panicked cries of his mom. There was a loud crash, like something heavy hitting the floor. Then, the most terrifying sound yet, the sharp beep of the alarm system being activated and the siren blaring through the house. In a matter of moments, the front door slammed open and then shut. I cautiously opened the bathroom door and peeked outside. The hallway was empty. I crept to the stairs and looked down to see Max's parents in the foyer, looking both relieved and frightened. They rushed up to me as soon as they saw me, hugging me tightly. The police arrived seconds later, flooding the house. They quickly assessed the situation and began searching the neighborhood. It didn't take long before they found the man hiding in the bushes a few streets over. He was arrested, and as the police led him away, The danger he posed finally felt like it was truly over. Max, still crying from all the noise, was comforted by his mom as I explained everything to the officers. His parents were incredibly supportive, thankful that I had kept their son safe and managed to call for help. The relief of knowing the stranger was caught and that we were all safe was overwhelming. I finally allowed myself to feel the fear and relief wash over me, my legs shaking and tears streaming down my face as the adrenaline started to fade. After everything settled down and the police had left, we all sat in the living room, a blanket of silence covering us for a few moments. Max was snuggled up in his mom's arms, finally calmed down. His parents kept thanking me, saying how brave I had been. Inside, I felt a mix of pride for handling the situation, but also a shiver of anxiety remembering how close we'd come to real danger. Reflecting on that night, I realized just how crucial it was to trust my instincts. The moment I felt something was off, I acted on it, even though I was scared. It made me think about how important it is to always be alert and prepared, especially when you're responsible for someone else's safety. This experience taught me a lot about myself. It showed me that I could handle tough situations, but it also reminded me that being cautious is never unnecessary. From then on, I knew that no matter where I was or what I was doing, I needed to keep my eyes open and always be ready for the unexpected.